Joining us now, Corey Lewandowski from New Hampshire. We're going to be talking about New Hampshire results last night. Former campaign manager, Trump for president, now an author of the book, Let Trump Be Trump. Got to read it. Go to Amazon. If you don't like them, go to your favorite bookstore, buy it there. He's got a new book coming out. This is going to be a doozy. Trump, the enemies from within. He's going to name names, not people that are retired, not people that went to an island, not people that are now with the RNC or somebody else, people that are in the White House right now undermining the president's agenda. And he is joining me now. Corey, great to have you.
Hey, John, thanks for having me. Happy day after Election Day.
Let's get to you were in New Hampshire yesterday with your friends there. Steve Negron, big victory. Tell us about his win. Tell us about the results in New Hampshire.
Well, look, John, I don't want to over or understate this, but I think that the Steve Negron win in New Hampshire's 2nd Congressional District in a very close election against two other military individuals, Steve's also a veteran, is directly attributed to the Godzilla of truth, because the only radio show that I know that Steve was doing was the John Frederick show, and he ended up winning that race by, it looks like, 1 point. And I think the radio shows that he came on and he talked to your listeners and turned out the vote in New Hampshire and got him that support is what put Steve over the top. And now he's ready to take on a very difficult district, an incumbent liberal leftist up in New Hampshire, to start representing New Hampshire with a conservative bend in the 2nd District because of you and what you helped deliver in that primary race last night.
Your Godzilla of the truth in America delivering yet once again. We're going to have Steve on tomorrow, and a big victory for Steve Negron. I think he's got a heck of a shot in the 2nd Congressional District. I looked at some of the numbers. I mean, he's right there, right? I mean, this is a swing district, and Steve is a great candidate. I think he can win this race.
Well, the most important factor in Steve is that he's from Nashua, which is the largest city in the 2nd District. It is the city where he is well known. He received 50% of the vote in Nashua last night in what was about a 6-way primary, Republican primary. So that's very important. It shows his strength there. That's where his home is. And then when you get out from Nashua and you start coming to some of the other towns, Hudson, Windham, Bedford, those are much more conservative. Actually, I think Bedford's in the 1st District, but you come to Windham, you come to Hudson, and then what you do is you start going up to the northern part of the state. The district is fairly large. It encompasses about 2/3 of the landmass in the state of New Hampshire. But it's a district that has been won by Republicans time and time again. Charlie Bass held that seat for many, many years, lost, came back, and held that seat again. So, there is an opportunity there. And when you look at voters who are making a decision in November, are they better off today than they were 2 years ago? The answer is an unequivocal yes from every measure that stands. So Steve's going to have a great chance. And I think what you'll see is because of his success, the Republican Party is going to be heavily engaged now in New Hampshire, not just in that 2nd District, but also in the 1st District.
All right. I think it's going to be very interesting, Corey. Thank you for that update. It's going to be great. Let's get to the book. Bob Woodward came out officially September 11th, yesterday. Fear. I read some of it. I couldn't read all of it. But from what I read, starting with the prologue, this book basically is an expose delivered by two disgruntled employees, Rob Porter and Gary Cohn. That's it. That is 80% of where Bob Woodward got this information. Rob the Rat Porter and Gary the Globalist Cohn. The book is called Fear. But I got to tell you, Corey, that the title of the book should be The Fear that Trump is going to drain the swamp, because this whole book is about globalist policies, trade, and the fact that the president doesn't want to continue to sell out the American worker. I mean, this is a stunning expose on why Trump is in Washington, and the fact that he's got a $27 billion trade deficit with the South Koreans, and he starts asking questions, and they start pulling papers off his desk. This thing is unbelievable. Rob Porter pulling papers off the president. Let me just ask you this, Corey. Who the hell elected Rob Porter and Gary Cohn?
Well, John, the answer is nobody did. And I can tell you, if Gary Cohn did what he said he did, which is he stole papers off the Resolute desk so that they wouldn't be signed by the president, I believe that's a clear violation of the Presidential Records Act, which is probably or possibly a criminal violation. And look, Rob Porter he appears in this book more than almost any other person. He has a starring role. He has a bigger role, according to the Woodward book, than Ivanka Trump has played in the White House, and Jared Kushner has played in the White House, than the discussions for Middle East peace. All of a sudden, we've got a hero, a person nobody ever heard of other than him allegedly, attacking and beating up his wives. He has a starring role, and Bob Woodward literally discusses the biggest scandal of this White House, which is Rob Porter's ex-wives' accusations of physical abuse in about one paragraph, and he completely glosses over it. He doesn't talk about it, and that tells you all you need to know about who the sources were for this book. Rob Porter, who thought he was going to be a federal judge probably, decided he was a Rhodes Scholar, Harvard-educated, and wanted to go in there and clearly stop the president's America First agenda. And he's not the only one. If Gary Cohn did what he said he did, which seems to be the case, because both of these individuals have now put out statements saying it doesn't accurately reflect our time in the White House, but when asked further, which part of the Woodward book specifically are you taking exception with? Which part is not quoted accurately? Neither of them could articulate one part of that book which they haven't been quoted accurately in. So, look, this is everything that has been wrong in Washington. These are the globalists. These are the D.C. insiders who weasel their way in to the Trump administration and decide that they and they alone, with the Messiah complexes that they have, will determine what is good for the country. Nobody elected these people. Nobody voted for them. Nobody knows who they are. So for them to do this, I hope there is accountability in the future.
You look at the statement they put out, and Corey, you're absolutely right. The statement was simply, well, it didn't accurately reflect our time in the White House. What the hell does that mean? I mean, either you dispute the comments or not. The difference in these statements, if you look at General Mattis's statement or you look at General Kelly's statement, they specifically refuted quotes attributed to them and said it was fiction. They never said it didn't happen. This denial...
Well, and same with Chris Christie, right? Chris Christie said that he's quoted in that book. Bob Woodward never picked up the phone and called Chris Christie. And so it's very difficult to quote somebody when you're getting it from a second source. But in the case of Rob Porter and Gary Cohn, guess what? My guess is Bob Woodward has them on audio tape. They clearly sat for extended periods of time. They wanted to become the heroes of the Bob Woodward book. They were clearly enamored by Bob Woodward and the D.C. Establishment who wants to take down Donald Trump at every chance. And they put themselves in a position to be a bigger part of a story. And now, only now, are they saying, well, it didn't represent my time in the White House. But they have never said specifically the quotes that are in this book aren't accurately attributed because they know they're on tape. They know they did the things to stop the Trump agenda, and now they have to pay the price for it.
Well, the price is going to be steep because, look, their agenda, Corey, was basically to get in there and to protect the special interest and to protect Goldman Sachs and to protect Lower Manhattan and to basically not challenge the status quo in Washington, which is basically free trade, open borders, more money for Wall Street, all, Corey, at the direct expense of the American worker. They finally have a champion in President Trump, and you've got these globalist weasels that go in there that are trying to overturn the election. American workers in this country have been kicked to the curb for 50 years. No one's standing up for them. They're treated like commodities. Their jobs shipped overseas, all on the behalf of the globalist set and the Wall Street set to make more money. And the fact that these people were undermining the president's elected agenda, his America First agenda. I mean, just don't you find that just incredible?
No, I find it disgusting. I find it incredible. I find it terribly disappointing. I find it, so sad that these are the individuals who they are trying to decide what is right. And by the way, John, when my new book comes out, you're going to see they're not the only ones. There are people in the building today, and I have seen it, and I've lived it now for almost 2 years, where the president has said, I want to fix this problem. I made a pledge to get this done. and they do exactly what Rob Porter and Gary Cohn did, which is they procrastinate. Let's put it to a committee. Let's have another conversation. Let's have another discussion, right? They stop the president's agenda, which is putting Americans first, by obfuscating, by procrastinating, by hoping that he's going to forget, by taking things off of his desk, by not telling him the truth, right? Rob Porter said in his statement, oh, well, my job is to make sure that all sides are represented. That's not your job, Rob Porter. Your job was to do what the president asked, and if that means to withdraw us from a trade policy, to make sure that that's what the president did, because that's what he asked for. And so, look, Rob Porter's probably never going to work in Washington, D.C. again. I can promise you he will not be a federal judge, which is what his goal was in life. And that's how it works. But I hope there's accountability. And if he did take documents off the president's desk, and he did walk out with them because they're now in Bob Woodward's book, either him or Gary Cohn, that could clearly be a violation of the Congressional Records, the Presidential Records Act, and there should be accountability for that.
Look, Bob Woodward has exposed the Swamp Protection Act for what it is. Now, here's my question, Corey, and I think you really nailed it here. You've got the Rob Porter and the Gary Cohn, which supplied the majority of this book that Woodward did, trashing the president because they don't like his policies, they don't believe in it, they're trying to stop it, and they're unelected. But as you say, this is just two of many. So we got to get through the midterms. I think the Republicans hang on. What happens after that? Is the president aware of this? Does he know what's going on? And is he ready come November 9th, come November 8th to clean house? Yes or no?
Look, the answer is yes, John. The president's acutely aware that people continue to block his agenda when he asks for things and he doesn't get them, right? He's very aware of that. And again, it's not just one or two people in the building. There's multiple people who are still doing this. And 8 weeks from today, we're going to wake up and we're going to have a harsh reality in front of us, okay? Either we have a smaller Republican majority in the House of Representatives and we've expanded our majority the Republicans have in the U.S. Senate, or the converse of that is we have lost the Republican majority in the House and Donald Trump wakes up to a very different Washington, D.C. And it's amazing what this president has been able to accomplish even with those people around him who are trying to stop his agenda, what he's been able to do with the economy, unemployment record levels, the lowest they've ever been, right? Home ownership, consumer confidence, all of these things he's doing without the help of his own staff. So when he wakes up 8 weeks from today, and we understand either the Republicans have a smaller majority in the House or they have lost, he's going to have to make that decision of how he wants to run his White House for the next 2 years. And my recommendation is you go back to what we said in the book. You let Trump be Trump. You bring the people in who support the president's agenda. When he asks to get something done, they find the way to get that done because he has the best political instincts of anybody I've ever seen. I have seen him be successful when everyone else has failed. When the media said he wouldn't run, he couldn't win, Hillary was going to win in the biggest record since Ronald Reagan's reelection in 1984, he proved all the pundits wrong. Let's let him get back to the way he does things that have been successful, which is delivering for the American people.
In order to do that, there's no question now, after the op-ed in the New York Times, the anonymous op-ed, and the book by Bob Woodward. By the way, this is no doubt in my mind a coordinated effort between Woodward and the Times in order to impact the midterms. I think that's a foregone conclusion to anybody that follows this stuff. But you're going to need somebody in there to do this. And, the president was willing and able, right, for all these people to come in. He got surrounded by people that don't believe in his agenda. They don't believe in him. They don't like what he's doing. They want to protect the swamp. They have a different agenda. They take their orders from Lower Manhattan and from Goldman Sachs. We get all that. But the question is, logistically, either way, as you mentioned it, who is going to go in there and do that? Isn't he going to have a brand new chief of staff and a couple of key people in order to clean this up?
John, I love what I've seen recently from the president as it relates to hires there. Larry Kudlow going in to the White House, someone who, as you know, was not in line with the president on tariffs, but understood something very important. Larry wasn't elected president, and he knows what his role is, and he supported the president in the campaign and is helping execute his agenda now from the National Economic Council. I love John Bolton going in there, a man who had a long-standing relationship with the president, who understands the national security apparatus as a national security advisor and getting the president's agenda done. I love the fact that he moved Secretary Pompeo from the CIA over to the State Department, a man who understands the president's agenda. I like the addition of Bill Shine as the Deputy Chief of Staff for Communications for the White House. Not only are these people contemporaries of the president, they're individuals who supported him prior to the election in 2016. These are individuals who aren't looking for a way after they leave the White House to get a radio show or to get a Fox News contract or to go and work at a television station. They've done all those things. And so those are the types of people. And you include, with them, Jared and Ivanka and a select group of people who are still at the building, who are working for the president, and there are good people who work there day in and day out. But I can tell you this, I love those additions. Those are additions that the president picked himself. The next big decision that the president is going to make, and it's going to be a critical one, is who the next White House counsel is going to be. It is a very important decision. We know that Don McGahn, the current White House counsel, is leaving, and the president needs to make sure that he's finding the right person to fill that very critical role. And if the last three major hires, the Shine of the world, the Kudlow of the world, and the Bolton of the world, are an indication of where the president is going, I love the direction that the White House is heading.
Corey, if you were there and had a role, what would be your position on finding the person who is a so-called senior White House official who did the op-ed in the New York Times? How would you out that if you were there?
Well, look, John, number one, I don't think this person's a senior official. But number two, what I would do is I would prepare affidavits, okay, which are legally binding documents that says, hey, I'm willing to sign this affidavit right here under the penalty of perjury, which is a very serious a very serious thing to do, and say, I want you to sign this to make sure that you are not the individual, that you swear that you are not the individual who either wrote, participated in, or submitted this through some additional source to the New York Times. That's not, look, you know what a lie detector test tells you? A lie detector test tells you, hey, this person's telling or not telling the truth. But there is no penalty for lying to a lie detector test. You make someone sign an affidavit, which is the full weight of the government under the penalty of perjury. Let's find out who's not willing to sign that document, because I think what you'll find is a number of people all of a sudden are going to start to pay attention, and that will severely limit who's thinking about doing this in the future.
I think that's a great idea. Second question, what do you think the one key move outside of finding the right lawyer, what is the one key move the president has to make come November 8th?
Look, I think the most important thing is it's not one specific move. The most important thing is surrounding the president with people who can have open and honest discussions with him, that he respects and trusts, that he knows are not leaking information. Look, to me, John, the biggest disappointment are the people who have either been around the president, like the Rob Porters and Gary Cohns of the world, who go and spill their guts afterwards to make a name for themselves, or the people who potentially still are there. And the president should be free to have candid and honest conversations with staff and not feel that they're going to be leaked outside of that room, because you can't govern efficiently. And so bringing the right people in to have the right conversations to make sure that the leaks are stopped. And, I see this every day. Another source inside the building said this, another source, the president was outraged about the Bob Woodward book. Look, let me be clear without revealing any confidential information. I've spoken to the president numerous times, okay? The last thing he was outraged about the Bob Woodward book. What he said was it doesn't paint an accurate description, and that's true. That chaos does not exist in the White House. I had the privilege on Friday of last week of flying on Air Force Two with the vice president over to Nellis Air Force Base to see the troops, and we did some events out in Las Vegas and flew back. The vice president was very clear. What he watches on television in the morning and then he goes into the White House is a complete dichotomy. He sees you and you turn on the TV, it's chaos and bedlam and pandemonium in the White House. That's not what's transpiring. And there are good people in that building and on that complex working every day to move the president, the vice president's agenda forward. But when he comes home at night and he turns on the television and guess what? Chaos today in the building. That's the narrative the media wants. But this president and vice president are being successful on behalf of the American people, and we need to make sure the people that are in the building are on one agenda, the Trump-Pence agenda, and that's putting Americans first.
Time to clean house. Corey Lewandowski, thanks for being with us. Read his book, Let Trump Be Trump. Get it, Be Dalton, your favorite bookstore, Amazon. New book coming out, The Enemies from Within. Corey, I've said this before. I know you chafe at it, but the president needs to bring you in there, put you in charge, clean this thing up. I love the idea about getting affidavits. Either you're going to sign them or not. If you told the truth, you're going to sign them. If you didn't, if you were the leaker, if you were the op-ed person, you're not going to want to sign it. I think that is the brilliant way to do it. We're out of time. Thank you, Corey Lewandowski, for being with us. Thank you so much.